ago talking about this idea from this movie that sort of really hit me, and you would say, oh, yes, he's a children's pastor because he watches Winnie the Pooh. I say I'm a very mature grown man because I watch Winnie the Pooh. I mean, I enjoy it. I think it's good. Anybody that likes to eat honey, a small smackerel of honey or a large smackerel of honey is just my kind of dude. He's been with me for a long time. So when they re-released the new movie this last summer, I really kind of put the next chapter of the story, of his story. I really was excited to see it. I was happy to see it in the theater. I was happy to spend some time as a family and kind of watching it together. And so it has birthed at least 3. It probably is going to end up being about 5 sermons in my heart and in my life that I just want to share with you over the next couple of weeks. And so we're entitled this series, Today is My Favorite Day, because that's a quote from Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh. And we really talked about how this particular series isn't necessarily, the movie isn't a Christian movie, but there's some really sound and interesting biblical principles that exist in this movie. And so there are things that I wanted to share. So the first week we said, doing nothing often leads to the very best something. We talked about how when we're still before God, it doesn't mean we're sitting lazy watching Netflix all day, but when we are still, when we find ourselves working in the path and the plan that he has established and set before us, when we are doing nothing, being still before God, finding refuge inside the ark instead of outside of the boat. When we find that kind of refuge, we often find ourselves into the very best something because it's God's dream, it's God's plan, it's God's purpose for our lives. And we spent some time talking about that in the first week. And then the second week, we said, it seems I must go forward to where I have never been instead of back to where I always am. And we talked about this idea of embracing the next thing that God has in store for us and how we can successfully navigate his plan and his purpose for us. Because God has something for you. No matter if you're 8 or 80, God has another step for you to take, another season for you to walk into, another path, a step to take on the journey of life. If you're still drawing breath in your lungs, if your heart's still beating, if God still has you here tonight, it's for a reason and for a purpose. And it's because he's going to launch you into something new, something different, and something exciting. And the very next thing that he has in store for you is a good thing. And you don't want to just be lazy, like, all right, I served my time, I put in my thing, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not capable, or I'm not willing to do the thing that God has in store. But God has something great in store for us. And so we have to go forward to that thing instead of back to where we always are, instead of back to where we've always been. Because you've seen that road. You know what's in that situation. You know what's in that circumstance. And that's good that God had you in there for a season and for a purpose. And there was a reason for it. But that reason now has expired, and God is bringing you into something new and something different and something exciting. So that's what we talked about last week. And this week, I want to take some time to show you a scene from the movie and talk a little bit about perspective. And the scene that I want to share with you, we're going to watch and find Winnie the Pooh, Pooh Bear, in the kitchen early in the morning. Now, he has come back from the 100-acre woods. He has found himself with his friend, Christopher Robin, who is now all grown up. And their journey is going to begin together. And so they had a conversation the night before. They woke up the next morning. And this is the scene that happens here.
Who? Who?
Your ladder is broken.
That's not a ladder, that was a shelf.
Well, that explains why it's no good for climbing.
I've got time to muck about. I should be working, trying to find a solution, even though I think it may be impossible.
People say nothing is impossible, but I do nothing every day.
No, Pooh, that's not... Oh, never mind. Look, I can't be distracted, which is why you need to go home.
But how?
Pooh in this particular quote says, people say nothing is impossible, but I do nothing every day. And it's interesting to kind of parse that particular quote or that idea out for a second, because while the average hardworking, gold-digging, dream-chasing person would think that nothing is impossible is this powerful, motivating quote, Pooh sees it quite differently. He knows that nothing is possible and that he's totally okay with that. He is literally living his best life by doing nothing all the time. And while I'm not going to suggest that sitting around and doing nothing is what we should be doing, I'm not going to suggest that doing just sitting as like a bump on a log, like a stuffed animal on a bed, is the best thing for us to be doing. we can't stop chasing our dreams. We can't stop chasing our best life, the life that God has in store for us. What I am saying is that who sees this life differently than the rest of us? People say nothing is impossible, but I do nothing every day. It's not the classic take on that particular idea of nothing is impossible. He has a different perspective. He has a different way of looking at this particular problem, this particular situation. He sees the world differently because he's poop, because he's a stuffed animal, because he's not real. But also because he has just this different take, and it really reminds Christopher Robin, and it should remind the rest of us, that life isn't always just the way you see it. You may have a history, a past, a situation, a circumstance that causes you to see life in a particular direction, in a particular way, and that's okay. But that's not necessarily how the world is. Your perspective isn't always the truth. God's perspective is the truth. I don't always have God's perspective in my life. You may not always have God's perspective in your life. There may be times where you see the world differently than God does. So just because you see it a particular way doesn't mean that it is that way. So this evening, I want to challenge you to change your perspective. Look at the problem. Look at the circumstance. Look at the path. Look at your life from a little bit of a different direction and see where God is taking and moving and shaping and molding it to. And so I think perspective, it really changes everything. And it's the most important thing when we talk about the idea of pain and the idea of suffering, the ideas of trials. Romans chapter 8, verse 28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Now, I've heard that verse a number of times. I've heard a number of preachers who are better looking than me. I know it's hard to believe that there's a preacher that's better looking than me, but there are guys out there and girls out there who are preaching this gospel, this message, and this idea with a perspective that my pain, that my suffering, that my life, the things that have happened are a bit of a happy accident. That thing that happened to you, God will work it out, as if it's like an aftermath to the problem. As if, oh yeah, you tripped and fell, but good thing you tripped and fell because there was a beach ball heading for your head and you didn't get hit with that beach ball. That's a happy little accident. And that's not really the perspective of this verse at all. That's not at all what Paul was talking about. In fact, truth be told, that was completely the wrong interpretation. Paul says that pain, that trial, that situation, that circumstance was intended for you. It was sent your direction because it was intended and it accomplished its task of helping you grow, of helping you see the world differently, through a different perspective, through a different understanding. The book of 2 Corinthians, Paul talks about how we have endured and gone through our sufferings so that we might then be an encouragement to others who are suffering. And so sometimes your trial isn't about you. Your circumstance isn't about you. Your life isn't yours. I feel like I've read that somewhere. I feel like maybe we should think about that for just a moment. Your life isn't about you. You see, your life was created and made for a purpose. And your purpose is to give glory and honor and praise to God. And so each and every step, each and every moment isn't about you. It's about him. It's about what he's doing in your life and in your heart. And so we need to change our perspective and know that these things happen to us, that we have pain, that we have suffering in our lives because it's a part of this life. It helps us grow. It helps us change. And the thing that I think we often overlook is that Jesus himself suffered. Now, we think about that around the crucifixion, but Jesus suffers physically, emotionally. He suffers psychologically in every way that we suffer. And so if Jesus suffers, then we have to suffer as well. John chapter 16, verse 33 says, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Suffering isn't just it's just a fact of following Jesus. Suffering, pain, that's a fact of this life. That's something that's going to happen to you, but it's an opportunity to allow us to grow closer to Christ. But here's the truth that I've learned, and the perspective that I've really come to understand as I go through the struggles, as I go through the trials, as I go through this life. The same struggle that I think is a sign that I was about to be destroyed. The same struggle that you're going through, where you say, "This is it. This is the big one. I'm going to die," is the same situation, is the same sign, is the same circumstance, it's the same thing that should tell you you are going to make it. Because if you're still struggling, it means that the devil cannot destroy you. Right? Somebody said amen. I got it. I got one, and that's all I need. We're here for another 3 hours. Let's go. I only needed one amen. If you're still struggling, it means you cannot be defeated. If you are still moving forward, if you still have breath in your lungs, if you're still capable of taking a step, it means that you cannot be defeated by your enemy. Your foe is defeated. He may be making it tough. He may be sitting on your back while you're trying to do push-ups, but you can't be defeated. The devil cannot destroy you. If you're still struggling, because if he could have destroyed you, he would have by now. Because he knows who you are as his child. He knows as you are as his son, as his daughter. He knows you have a purpose. He knows you have the opportunity to bring that light of gospel truth to each and every person you come in contact with. And if he could have snuffed your life out, he would have done it already. But he didn't, because you have still more fight left in you, more things to go. So your sign of a struggle is a sign that your deliverance is on its way. So as you go through this life, there's going to be weapons that are going to be formed against you. There's going to be floods, but they're going to be arcs. There are going to be seas that part. There will be no victory for your enemies. These struggles aren't going to destroy you. There is no force in this world that can stop you except for you. And you're the only one that can stop yourself. As you still struggle, as you move on, as you push forward, you can still do it. God is still giving you breath in your lungs. He's still giving you a heartbeat in your chest, which means you can still push forward. You can still do it. You can accomplish the things that God has in store for you. Your God is this all-powerful God. He has sacrificed everything. He's given everything because he loves you. And he has made you in a way that you will live in eternity with him in heaven. You just have to not stop yourself from walking the path with him. Because you're the only force that can stop you. You're the only one that can say, you know what? I'm not going to walk anymore. I'm going to sit right here. I'm going to pout. I'm alone. And I'm complain. And everybody's going to think I'm justified because look at everything I've been through. I deserve to sit here. I deserve all of this. And you need to give me my attention. You stopped yourself in that moment, in that situation. Your all-powerful God has sacrificed, has suffered, just as you have suffered. And he hasn't given up on you. You should not ever give up on yourself. But in order to get out of our own way, we need to, like Winnie the Pooh, we need to change our perspectives about this world and the path that we walk on. Because regardless of what the devil has told you, you are braver than you think. You are stronger than you see. And you are smarter than you believe. And I believe that's a perspective that is often the first thing that gets attacked in our lives. Often the first thing that's being told you is you can't do this. You're not strong enough. You're not smart enough. You're not brave enough. You can't do these things. And so immediately, if we begin to think that we can't do these things, or we start to think that we can't do these things, we'll start to believe that we can't do these things. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves perched up on our seats. Just waiting. I'm not strong enough to do that. I can't get through that valley. I can't cross that chasm. I can't do these things that need to be done. I'm just going to sit and wait. But God says it's a struggle, but you're going to have to push on. You're going to have to persevere. Because if the enemy can make you think you're not good enough, then you're going to believe it. And it won't be hard because it won't be hard to stop you in that moment because you'll feel absolutely hopeless in that task. So in the moments that I have remaining, I want to give you 4 steps, that will help us change our daily, our weekly, and our monthly perspectives so that we can see the world the way that God intends to see it. And so first and foremost, obviously, and I dare to say repetitiously, the first thing that we need to do is read God's word. In times of struggle and in times of suffering, we're most susceptible to believing the lies. In the times where you're most tired, you're most easily able to believe the lies, the change of perspectives that the devil wants to throw your direction. But when we read God's word, his truth, we should be constantly in it and constantly in the word so we can receive his instruction, so we can receive his wisdom. But when we're in the middle of suffering, we're like, oh, I don't have time. I'm struggling so much. I'm suffering so much. And so one of the first things that goes in our lives is spending time in his word, spending time in his truth because we feel so overwhelmed and so busy. But it's in our most desperate times that we need to fill our lives with the things of God and make sure that our mind is strong so we can keep out the lies and keep these warped perspectives of our lives away. The second thing we need to do is look for reasons to be thankful. We should be developing this attitude of gratitude in our lives. And it's something that we should do consciously. It's an active mindset. It's an active choice that as first we have to really kind of force ourselves to do it. But as we continue to do it, it'll become more and more natural to us. But we really have to develop this sort of attitude of gratitude, this idea of understanding that we've been given an opportunity. Thomas Edison once said, opportunity is missed by people because it's dressed up in overalls and looks like hard work. Because opportunity is hard work. Harvest time is hard work. You don't see the farmer sitting in the house when the harvest needs to be reaped. When something work needs to be done, the farmer puts on his overalls and he goes out to work. So we have to change our perspective because hard work is what is required at harvest time. If you want God's harvest in your life, then you're going to have to make it work. You're going to have to change your perspective. Be thankful for the work. Be thankful for the struggle. Be thankful for the grind, the moments that you have to sweat, because harvest is hard work. But it's the blessing of God that is being ordained in your life. We want God's blessing to show up like Ed McMahon on our front porch. But harvest is hard work. It's hustle. It's about getting out there and the sweat on your brow and the tired muscles and the achiness and the strength that's required each and every day to get up and continue to work and to continue to work. So be thankful that we have a God who is working all things together for your good. Our God is working. He isn't in heaven sitting back on his throne waiting. He's working all things together for your good. So we also have to be working. We're made in his image. We're made in his likeness. We're made to work. You have to get up and decide it's time to work. It's time to work out these relationship problems. It's time to work out these financial issues. It's time to work out in these opportunities that God has given to us. Because these struggles, these difficulties that I'm facing are really God-ordained moments in my life to work and to reap the harvest that he has in store for me. God's harvest has already come, but you've missed it because you're dressed up like overalls and it looks like really hard work. The harvest is hard work. You're struggling for so long because you're under this attack and you feel like you're not able to defend, but your harvest is coming. Your deliverance is on its way. So keep working and be thankful that he's a God who's also working for your good. And once we take this active decision to change our mindset, be thankful for the work, have this attitude of gratitude in our lives and in our hearts that we don't see everything as problems. We don't see everything as circumstance or situation. But we see them as opportunities to be thankful. We begin to make these active decisions in our lives. And then we'll find it easier to release our anxiety and rely upon God. Releasing all my anxieties to God through prayer brings me peace and it helps me trust God more. But make no mistake, releasing anxiety and walking in faith of God is going to do something. It is going to be something that's going to take an active move, an active decision for me in my life. For too long, many of us have been holding on to the problem or the situation or the circumstance. The pain we've been holding on to, the regret, thinking, I can fix this. I got it. I'm so close. If I just do this little thing, if this person just moves this direction, if this situation just breaks a little bit to this direction, I can fix this. I am making progress. But that weight is actually the thing that's holding you back. You're trying to do it in your own strength, and you were not made to do it in your own strength. God's giving you a strength to work, but not a strength to work all things. You see the difference? You don't have to work all things. You just have to work your thing. So stop trying to mess with all these things over here. Stop trying to mess with all these people over here. They got their own things they got to work out. You work your thing. He'll work all things together for your good. I get anxious. I get anxious a lot. In fact, I would say that getting anxious is a bit of a specialty for me. And there have been seasons in my life where I keep thinking that if I talk to God about all the things that worry me, if I could just spend some time telling him about all the things that have bogged me down, he would see it as complaining, right? Because you all have that one person at work that every time they open their mouths, it's a complaint, and you are like, oh, I cannot close my ears fast enough. And you hear they're complaining and they change your perspective. Now all of a sudden you're miserable. And I don't want to be like that to God. I don't want to have my selfishness, my immaturity. And maybe we could choose to see it that way. And there were times in my life when I went through that struggle that I felt that way. But as I was going through that just a couple of years back, I had a friend text me a couple of verses from the book of Psalms. In fact, Psalms 119, 25 through 32. And he said he was praying for me. And the Lord had put this on his heart. And so the overall verses, they really hit home with me, but there were two particular verses that I want to share with you that brought me a lot of peace. So verses 28 and 30 say this. My soul is weary with sorrow. Strengthen me according to your word. I have chosen the way of faithfulness. I have set my heart on your laws. Now, as I'm reading these verses, I felt like God was giving me full permission in that moment to share everything with him. My worries, my anxieties, the things that have been paralyzing me, my doubts. Because David in these verses, he was weary with sorrow. And we all get there. And it's a part of the human experience. It's not sin to be worried. That's a part of the human experience. You're going to be worried. I've got two little people. One of them is playing a soccer game in about 10 minutes. I'm worried about her every time she steps on the floor. I want her to score 6 goals. I want her to have so much fun. I don't want her to get hurt. Worry's going to happen. I'm going to have that as a part of my experience. That's not doubt in God. That's not doubt in his realness or his ability to protect my daughter or to protect me in my life. That's worry. It's going to happen. Just like I'm going to be laughing at somebody when somebody walks behind Howard and trips over the cord and almost falls and breaks their face open at the communion time. It's supposed to be really quiet and serious. That's funny. Most of you didn't laugh. But it was funny when I just did it a little bit ago. It was funny. I laughed at myself over there. That's a part of the human experience. I love my wife. Care about her deeply. Sometimes when we watch movies together, there's a sappy moment. I'm not crying, she's crying. It's just happening over on my face sometimes. That's a part of the human experience. It's a part of doubt. It's a part of the human experience. We have these emotions. We can't reject them wholeheartedly. We have to understand that we need to bring them before God and allow him to teach us how to control them, how to use them, how they are enhancing powerful portions of our lives. They are given to us for a reason, and they are to be subject to him as all things on the earth are. But we have to learn how to control them, but they are a part of who we are. Worry isn't the devil. Sometimes the devil puts worry in our hearts and in our lives and allows us to let that run rampant. We need to learn how to control that. But the existence of worry is not sin. We need to control it. It is not sin. And so if I have it, I have to be able to share it. I have to have that right kind of day in my life. The person who is godly giving me counsel. I have to be able to share my worry and my regret. Because I can't hold it in. I have to share it with God. I have to unburden it with him. I can't keep carrying it around. If I have it, I need to give it to him. Over and over and over and over again if I have to. Daily, weekly, month, hourly. If I have to give it over to him. It's not a sin to have it, it's a sin to hold on to it. And that's where I have to separate myself and understand it. Just because I have worry doesn't mean I got to hold it in. In fact, I should get rid of it. The devil wants me to hold it in. He wants it to become a weight. And God's not like, oh, he's such a complainer. I don't think he's saying that. He's not saying, oh, he's such a complainer. I just heard this prayer. He's your spirit father. He loves it. He knows exactly what you're going through. And the thing that probably makes him laugh about our worrisome prayers is that he sees the future and the answer. He's like, yeah, I know. That's tough. But wait till you see what's coming. Wait till you see what's happening. You're going to be so happy. That's where your God is. So he's not like, oh, this guy again. He's like, yeah, just wait. It's going to be really funny in just a minute. Just give it a second. But release that worry. Release that burden. Every mother worries. Every father is concerned. Every person has regret and fear. They're a part of our lives. We can't avoid them. We have to be constantly turning over the weight and the burden of these situations and circumstances to God and say, strengthen me according to your word. Strengthen me according to what you have said in your word and your truth. When we don't know we don't understand the whole situation, it's okay because God does. He's going to get to it and it's going to make our lives a little bit better. In my life, the situation with my friend was texting me about has not yet been resolved. That situation hasn't fixed itself in my life. And it's been some 2 years later. In fact, in some ways, that situation has gotten worse. But I got better. I got better. Not because the situation resolved itself, but because I unburdened my heart and allowed myself to be strengthened with his word. I took my broken heart to God in prayer, and he healed it. And it brought this real deep relief. And I started to trust and believe in him in a way that I had never done so before. But it happened as soon as I unburdened my heart and unburdened my life. Which brings me to my fourth and final point this evening. Allow others to pray with you and for you. Around that same time as my friend was texting me these verses, one of the worship leaders who comes here somewhat frequently had said to me that after the rehearsing for their set, he said, I'd like to pray with you. I'd like to pray for you after the service. And so I said, sure. And after all of you left, I met with him. We began to pray. And in that moment, I was simultaneously broken apart and put back together. I remember standing there, and there were several people that were here that particular evening, and they were laying their hands on me, and tears began running down my face. They were tears of both sorrow and tears of joy. And when they were done praying, there was this peace. Not a solution to my problems, but a peace that passes all understanding and logic. Paul talks in his word about a thorn in his flesh, not understanding why it stayed with him for so long. And you're going to have circumstances in your life that are going to stay with you for a long time. And that's not because you messed up. That's not because you're a sinner in the hands of an angry God. Sometimes situations just stay with you for a long time. And God, through that circumstance that stays with you for a long time, heals and breaks and puts back together, stronger than it ever was before. But I would not have had that hope. I would not have had that feeling of peace had not those people prayed for me. Had not my God intervened through those people laying their hands upon me and speaking words of truth, speaking words of life, speaking words of hope, speaking words of comfort, not knowing my situation, not knowing my circumstance. They weren't have some great insight into my life. They spoke truth about my life. They had no idea that they knew. The only person on this earth that knew was my wife. And she said, did you tell them? I said, no. She said, I can't believe they said that. I said, I know. They didn't solve my problems. They didn't even give me a formula to how to fix it. But I was released and strength broken and put back together in a moment where only God could have intervened. And it was in that moment that reminded me of this verse, Philippians 4:9, which says, and the God of peace will be with you. I don't know what you're going through in your life, in your situation, in your circumstance. My friend didn't know what was going on, but he ministered to me. This God of peace overwhelmed me. We serve a God of peace. He brings peace in our suffering. And it doesn't mean that all of our circumstances will turn out the way that we want them to. In fact, often it means that circumstances turn out differently than we ever expected. Better than if we had got things our way. I can't tell you the amount of times I think, God, it needs to work out this way. He's like, no, just let me be God for a second, and I'm going to work it out a different way, and they're going to see how much better. I'm like, oh, you're right. That was better. And it's true. It's hard for me to admit sometimes that I don't know as much as God does. And maybe I'm the only one that has trouble recognizing that. But in my life, I go, God, no, it has to be this way. It's like, okay, I love you, but I'm going to do it this way, and it's going to be better. And it's like, oh yeah, it's so much better. And when we recognize that, we can embrace this God of truth, of peace. Our God is the God of peace. The same God that lives in your heart brings his peace to your heart. And it doesn't always happen the right away. It's not always the easiest thing, but God does not leave his children. So we have to never forget that we are braver than we think, stronger than we seem, and smarter than we believe. Because we have a God who lives inside us, who lives with us, who walks with us, who talks with us, who shares this life with us, this journey with us, who is working out all things. He's working each and every day on my behalf. So this week, I'm going to challenge you to change your perspective. Remember, people say nothing is impossible, but you have a God that lives within you. He does the impossible every day. Let's close in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, in Jesus' name, we love you. We thank you for loving us. We thank you for your work that you're putting in on our behalf. We thank you for your love and your peace. Father, I pray for each and every person that's here tonight, that, Lord, you would just bless them with peace in this place. Lord, even now as we pray. Lord, I don't know their circumstance or their situation, but I know you can give them peace. So, Lord, just give peace to each and every person tonight. Let us find the perspective of this life that you desire for us to have. Let us see you do the impossible work each moment we wake up and walk with you. Lord, we thank you for doing that. We thank you for all that you do and how you continually do amazing, awesome things in our lives. In Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. We will be back here again next Saturday night for at least one more, probably two more sermons on this particular topic. Today is my favorite day. We hope that you come and hang out with us again. We'll be back. Can't remember. I think Aaron or Andy Miller is going to come lead a worship with us. We hope that you come and join us. Until then, know that we love you, that we miss you constantly, that we pray for you when you're not here, and we can't wait to see you again next Saturday night at 6 o'clock. Until then, have a blessed and amazing week, church.